Welcome
Hello.
to Business as Usual. This is Stephanie Thomas, or SM. I don't know which you prefer, actually.
I tend to go by Steph when I'm talking to people because SM's a bit of a weird name, isn't it?
Well, I mean, mine's Isla. I can't judge. Like, I cause people so much stress, and that makes me sad because I never want to, but I'm like, I like this name, so we're keeping it. But
my married name's the same. I have to spell it everywhere I go. So I stick with my maiden name for books because it's Thomas. It's like the tank engine, nice and easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's very simple and easy to pronounce and read, and that actually is a benefit. People get stressed out because they care, and then I'm always reassuring them, like, it's fine. Well, so Stephanie, or Steph, excuse me, has both written at least one book, and then also started a publishing company, and is in the middle of, I believe, a draft on a new book, and has a really interesting story about how she was able to find the way to get her words out and a commitment to helping others get their words out. So I just want to give people a chance to hear more about how that came up for you. Like, people always talk about, I guess not everybody, but I hear lots of people talk, oh, I want to write a book. But to go from the thought to the action, there's something to that. So how did you make that happen for yourself?
I think it's madness. I think going from thinking about a book to writing a book is absolute madness. Don't trust any writers. We're all mad. If I'm honest.
Thank you for that.
Sorry to all the writing community. I'm speaking for us all. We're all mad.
I apologize. The dog, it's thundering, of course, here. So the dogs are going to help us.
It's because he agrees with me. He knows that we're all mental.
Background.
We're due some
I do
thunder
think that
soon.
to be a writer is a bit mental.
You've got to be to dream up these characters and the things that we do to them. You've got to have a little bit of madness about you, I think. But so I have always written, like, since I could form words, I've always been telling stories. Got me a bit of reputation as a bit of a liar when I was little. I used to make up the most fantastical stories to try and get myself out of trouble. And then eventually I started.
Did it work?
Sometimes.
Were you successful? Yeah.
Every now and again, but my parents caught on pretty quick, bless them.
Yeah.
Teachers not so much, but parents.
Oh, okay, good. So you learned where your audience was.
Exactly. People that didn't know me. That's my audience. And then I started actually writing stories rather than just telling them. And I sort of started taking it seriously. I did a script writing course at university in Lincoln. Lincoln, not your Lincoln. I didn't travel that far. And I just thought to myself, when am I ever going to have 3 years to just write again? Like, when's that ever going to happen? So I had a fantastic time, made some brilliant friends, and thankfully had some really, really supportive and encouraging teachers. One of which put me up for an award, which I didn't win, but she believed in me enough to put me up for it, so I'll be forever grateful for that. And
that feels really good, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It
was like believing you at that level.
Yeah, and especially because I respected her so much that her opinion to that height meant a lot to me. I say a lot. I'm very aware of that. I do. My characters don't, but I do. And
I touch my face, and you're not supposed to do that. So, like, we're all learning.
I sit like this, so I don't fidget.
No, that's so smart. I like.
We've all got our things, haven't we? Mm-hmm. And then I got a job as a receptionist when I was 17, which meant when I was on the evening shift and I didn't have a lot of customers, I had a lot of time to just sit and create my own little worlds. A lot of my colleagues thought I was a bit mad because it was saved on a shared computer, so anybody could read it at any time.
Okay.
Looking back, they weren't wrong. But from that, I thought to myself, this is something I really enjoy doing. It's something that I turn to a lot in times of stress. Like if I'd had a really hard night at work, I'd sit and write, and that would make me feel a million times better. Some people jog, I put a pen to paper. We've all got our mental health coping mechanisms, and I think that comes through quite a lot of my writing, because my characters do tend to go through the ringer, and sometimes they come out the other side okay.
Do you punish them when you're in a bad mood?
I punish them around them when I'm in a bad mood.
Oh, okay. I'm like, that's fantastic. It's very healthy. I use D&D. That's how I get through it.
What, D&D?
Oh, Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing games. Yes.
I've never played it. I'm on
so
all the forums because I love the world building of it. It's just fabulous.
Right. Yeah, there's so much it's collaborative. I have tended to play with people who do more collaborative storytelling. So you're basically telling a group story, but the person running it is kind of the primary world builder. And it was when my kids were younger, because as a mom, right, like you have to always be so selfless and giving, and you have to constantly show up. And so I would play this game with my friends, and I would play like assassins and mercenaries, and I would just be like ruthless and selfish and just like, I mean, obviously you can't, as collaboratively, obviously you have to limit that a little bit, but as to the extent that I could, and it just helped me to get that out so that I could go back to like, the 47th, time playing Chutes and Ladders. It's like, I might die. Here we go. But you got to do it because like, that's where they're at. And you have to help them develop. But so that storytelling piece and that mental health piece, it's always been this combination of creativity and expression, and then it does feed something in my own. So I hear it from that person. I like to write too, but I would say that actually playing this storytelling game was where I managed that for a long time. So, and you did say actually when we were chatting or in the pre-show conversation stuff that you had a journey around that like your mental health process and your writing process were somehow interwoven. Is that, or did I misunderstand that? Or
no, you definitely understood that.
Okay.
My first book, The Light, which I published in 2018. So I've been writing it for a while, but just picking it up here and there, writing the bits I liked, leaving out the boring middle bits. And, and then, so I had my son 2 years prior. I had my first son in 2016. And because I have anxiety and depression anyway, because it wasn't the best birth, I ended up with PMD. And The Light really helped me through that. And I thought, these words don't do me any good just on my screen. And that's the moment I decided to publish my first book. I was like, when you have depression or anxiety or PMD or anything, the world can seem so small and you can feel so alone. And having a different world to escape to is a lifesaver. And I just sort of thought, if I enjoy writing it, maybe someone will enjoy reading it. And that's when I probably had a glass of wine and published it. So yeah, it's definitely interwoven the two with me anyway.
That's really beautiful. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I do some writing, and there's something in it where, and honestly, in any creation, like I've had it happen with a podcast where people will reach out and they'll say, wow, that really touched me, or I related to that. And there's just something so powerful in that, to feel like, oh, this thing that was true and deep or meaningful to me was also true or expressive or something to this other person. And it's that connection or that lack of isolation. It just feels really powerful. And like on both sides, I think. So it's beautiful that like you were like, I have this thing that helped me. Let me see how it'll do. And it did pretty well, right? Like folks, has anyone responded in that way to you? Because I know that, I don't know, like how that goes in the self-publishing world. Most of my like blogs or podcasts, very internet focused, so it's very easy to get that feedback.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to get feedback actually on self-published books. So if you happen to read a book by an independent author, please leave a review, because it means the world to us. Even if it's just a thumbs up, it literally means the world to us. That's my little do good for the writing community.
And I've put your website down here so people can find you, and I'll have it in the notes. But yeah, there you go. So people can go see what you're up to and get, go live a thumbs up, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Every little helps. Every vote helps. But with the light, the people that reached out to me the most were people that I knew. I might not necessarily have spoken to them in a long time, because a lot of people on my Facebook. So obviously with Facebook, you make friends throughout your life, don't you? So it might be somebody you haven't spoken to since college, and they reached out to me after reading it to say how much they enjoyed it, how much they enjoyed the character's journey, little bits and pieces that reached out to them. And it was lovely speaking to them again. And that's probably been one of my favorite things with The Light, is reconnecting people. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. I'll say that.
I can imagine. So one of the questions I like to ask is, what is a hobby or an interest you have that people even might be surprised about?
I game a lot. I don't know if people know about me, because I tend to say I play with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I'm the one that's filling up the Pokédex on my own time.
Nice.
Because I love it. I love a game.
Me too.
I'm a pretty open book, to be honest. Like most people, if people ever want to know anything about me, I tell them. Like, I'm pretty stupid in that regard.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I get it. Like a really good friend of mine a long time ago, and it's part of what made me think of it, is she was like super like mathy and feminist. Like she had like a degree from Stanford in math. She taught math, but she loved America's Top Model. And when she told me that, I was like, how is that working? Don't understand. Which of course we all have things. So like, that's why I was like, it's a good question. It's like something fun to ask.
I'm a massive feminist, and women's rights and all of this stuff, and people are shocked when they realize that I watch the Kardashians. Like, I love the Kardashians. Because if you're my view on it is, if you're a feminist, then you support women no matter what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't deny that those women, I'm going to go on a Kardashians rant now, you
I'm
can't
ready
deny
for it.
that those women have made an absolute career out of doing what they do in a way nobody before them has ever done, and probably nobody ever after them's ever done. They're just workaholics. They grind for what they get, and just because they're influencers and they don't have a talent, but they do, because doing what they do and having people interested in what they do is a talent. And as a feminist, I support women. There you go.
Love it.
Okay, give me a call.
That's right. You can write a story about how you met them because of this moment in time. I mean, hopefully that'd be super fun.
Christian is typing me an NDA right now.
Probably right now. I mean, you got to put it out there. What is the best advice that you've either received or heard coming out of your mouth? I don't know if that ever happens to you, but someone will ask me a question and I'll say, and as I'm saying it, I'm like, wow, that's really good. I don't know where that came from. So it's equally valid, whichever one you feel interested in sharing, or both.
The best advice I've ever got is, if you want people to invest in you, first you have to invest in yourself. And that's where this journey with the disease and the publishing house and everything's come from. Because if I want people to invest in my work, then I need to prove that I care enough, that I believe enough to invest my time and my money and my soul at times into this process.
Right.
And the best advice I think I've ever given is get a divorce, but that's a different story.
I actually understand that as well. So sometimes it's what you got to do. And you said the disease is coming out, or is it already out?
It's out on the 2nd of September.
Wow, perfect. So everybody, there you go. In just a couple weeks, you can go check that out. And then I will have to say, like, one of the things that I love in the responses that you shared in all my different questions was that you seem like so excited to help other people have the same experience. And a part of why I did the whole business as unusual story for me is to really focus on that, the ways in which people are taking these different platforms and then creating sort of a new way of, I'll do this so you don't have to just be all by yourself. They take these different platforms, and instead of making it just like me and my, success and wealth, but like, how do we do something that makes it so that we can all win? How do we all rise together? And so I love that, the way that you're like, I love this process and I'm excited to help someone else. And I know you said that's a little bit down the road, but what do you think makes that happen for you? Is it more time or like more understanding, or I don't know?
To be honest, what's the biggest roadblock in me taking another author's journey at the moment is probably money, because it's cost a lot to, and that's just me being honest. I haven't got a GoFundMe or anything like that. I'm going to do it on my own. That's why I've said sort of I've given it like a 5-year in my head. In the next 5 years, I want to find another author and take them on this journey with me. Plus also over the next 5 years, I want to publish my own books and learn what works and what doesn't. So this time round, I've done everything. And so I know who the best editor for this genre is, and then if I write a different genre, I'll find my editor for that. And that way, when I find somebody, because it's people put their hearts into their work, and I don't want to mess it up, basically. So at least when I find someone who's mad enough to trust me with their book, then I can say, oh, I know this great author, oh, I know this great cover designer, and I don't want to be a vanity press, because there are vanity presses out there where you pay to publish your work, and I could set up, because I've got all the behind the scenes set up, so I could say, oh, give me 500 quid and I'll publish a book. But I don't want to do that. I want it to be my investment in them, because I want them to know that I believe in them the way that I'm believing in myself. Because I think that's really important for people to believe, for people to know that somebody believes in them.
Yeah, it really is. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
So can you give a thumbnail sketch of when you're saying like there's all of this stuff, right? Like what or you even like, what are the things that were easy or like that surprised you that you thought, oh, I didn't know someone had to do this? I don't know.
So, publishing it on Amazon KDP is so straightforward, so user friendly. The only downside is Bezos takes a lot of your money. Jeff.
He doesn't really need any more.
No, tell me about it. I mean, another thing that kicked off this journey was I looked at my paperback sales for The Light, and he made more than me on my paperbacks, and he didn't write it.
No.
And so I was like,
he didn't do anything.
There's got to be a different way to do this. So I still work with KDP directly, because you get the best royalties on your ebooks. And then I use a company called Ingram Sparks for like my print on demand service, but they do also supply online bookstores like Barnes and Noble and stuff like that.
Okay.
Then I work with Gardeners, another distributor that gets it into UK bookstores such as like Foyles and Waterstones and things like that. So it's a lot of steps to reach one
sounds
goal.
like it.
And it's been a lot of paperwork and a lot of stress, but we're nearly there. I say me, it's just me, but yeah, we're nearly there. But one thing that did surprise me is I never ever realised that I would have to pay an additional fee to get my synopsis for my book put on bookstores' websites. That shocked me.
Oh, really?
Huh. Yeah. And it's an annual fee as well.
Oh, okay, great.
So at times, in my lower moments in this process, I have felt it like it's a bit of a money racket. But it hasn't put me off. If anything, it's made me more determined, because it's not fair to do that to people. So
yeah. No, it's true. Like for different reasons, as research, I'm just very curious about random rabbit holes. And so many of the like famous musicians are people that come from money. like they have the story, oh, I was discovered, but it was also like they weren't living in like a,
They weren't
I don't
living
know,
there.
kind of like, I don't even know, like they were, they were fine, like living off their parents' money or their trust fund and like paying PR firms to get the word out. It wasn't like they, sort of like worked at a restaurant and not like I think people need to suffer, but as one of those things where I was like, oh, like the reason a lot of like very talented artists, writers, like visual artists, musicians or whatever, don't ever get even to like a point of viability, right? Like, because we also have this weird idea that like you have to be like a superstar, and it's really just like, let's get to a point of viability. And how do you get there? And honestly, for a lot of people, it's come from money, because like you said, like in order to get those additional, and the thing is, it's not like, it's never one thing, right? Like you can't pay for like the big billboard and then suddenly people flock to you like they do in a movie. It's consistent, regular output. It's consistent presence. And so it's like, do I have to pay this fee? Is it worth it to actually get the presence? And like you said, it does feel a little bit like a money racket.
I imagine
and
most industries are like that. Like I imagine everybody, not even creative industry, I think all industries are a bit of they've generally got some kind of money racket going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super pro capitalism, and I know that's not the point of this, so I'll stay. But yes, I think we have it a little backwards with how we do in those ways. Like it would be, because here's the thing: there's this a friend of mine was running for Senate actually a couple of years ago, and she had a degree in economics and was talking about like the ways in which we need to fund artists, which I thought was really great. Like, and she said anybody who thinks we should spend, and she said a month, which I'm like, that's way too long, but she spent a month without any art. Don't watch any shows. Take the pictures off your wall. Don't read any books. Don't listen to any music, and see how long you can do that before you want to claw your eyes out. Because I mean, you couldn't, right? Like you couldn't actually do it. Like you would be confronted by art at some point because it's everywhere. But but we still have this weird, at least culturally here, it sounds like similarly there, like this weird sort of like, well, we shouldn't have to pay people to produce it. It's like, but we want it. We need it. It makes all of the other things that we're doing less tedious. Like if I can listen to music while I'm cleaning, I enjoy my cleaning better.
Yeah.
Like, so
you get it done quicker as well, don't you?
Yeah. And I'm like, and I get it done with style. No. I used to embarrass my kids so much. It's just like no problems with being a weirdo in public. But I'm that person that like dances, in the grocery line.
Yeah.
It's also make shopping
Especially
better.
At Christmas, when they play the Christmas hit. I'm like, all I want for Christmas is you.
Oh yeah, we're gonna start this musical podcast now. No. But yeah, and so, but her point, I was like, yeah, no, it's really true. Like you said, like I hadn't really thought about it, and I'm like, we don't like treat it like it's valuable, but we need it, right? In the same way that we need, people to raise our children and care for them, but we don't necessarily treat that labor like it's valuable. And so that's where I get kind of off on some of the ways that we handle like money and incentives, is that our lives would be so empty without the creative expression that people offer. And we'd all feel a loss and a diminishment, even folks that don't necessarily value it directly. And yet we still haven't had the, political will, I guess, to really push forward and say, no, we need this to be, valued as a part of our industry. So that's my, I guess, moment of profound thought or whatever.
I like it. I agree with that.
So, and you said one of your dreams would be to see your book in an actual bookshop. Has that happened yet? Or what's the steps to make that happen?
So once you've got it on like the 50 distributors, or I think it was 3, but I'm going to be dramatic and say 50.
Let's say 50. I'm good with that. No one's going to check it.
No. And, then you have to write to bookshops, book chains with what's called an advanced information sheet. So that outlines, you've got to have the blurb in there, you've got to have a summary, you've got to have your target audience, a sample, the RP, basically everything they would need to make a decision on whether they stock your book or not. So it hasn't happened of us yet, but there is an independent bookshop in the city near me that has told me to write to them when it's released, and they will consider stocking a copy. So hopefully, come September, I'll be able to physically see my book in a shop. Either that, or I'll just start sneaking them in. I don't know.
Yeah, you'll just drop them off. You need to do like a public reading and author signing or something, so you can have like a bookshop have you sort of like be their like Wednesday night treat.
I've got a book launch party on the 1st
Awesome.
at a local cafe, and I'm terrified. But I will be doing a very brief reading there, and I've got a few copies to sell. But it's not a bookshop, but I just want to get together and have a few drinks and celebrate this journey, or commiserate this journey, however you look at it.
I think you should celebrate for sure. I mean, it's such an accomplishment to, like you said, be mad enough to go from not, thinking about it to doing it, and then to go from the ease of the BASO system to actually taking on and publishing your work. Like that's a lot. And I think that like we're often very outcome oriented, and it's not that outcomes aren't important. However, if we focus on what we accomplish, like our process, like the things we're in control of, like then it's easier to feel that sense of satisfaction with your work and to kind of be content, versus like if you're focused only on the outside things that you don't control, it's a lot harder to maintain that sense of mental stability and contentedness. So celebrate, that's what I say. It's such an accomplishment.
It's interesting that you say about the outcome, because I've sort of spent the last few days, oddly enough, in a bit of a funk. I've come out of it today, thankfully, about sales, just thinking like, is it going to sell? Is anybody going to read it? And then it was last night, I was there like, well, even if this one doesn't, I've laid the groundwork for the one that might. And also I've learned so much, and I've met so many lovely people in this process, that I'm trying to now just focus, like you say, just focus on the journey rather than the outcome. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd be lovely to sell like 50 million copies, but that's probably not going to happen.
I mean, who knows? Don't say that. Like, it's always possible. After the Kardashians call you, suddenly everyone's going to want your book. It's just how it goes, right?
They're on the phone now. Hello, Kim.
There you go. That's awesome. So yeah, no, that sounds like a great process. And then in terms of, I guess another question, you said that, you're looking for your art, finding that. Did you find like an artist that you connected with for the cover art, or did you have to commission something, or did you find a piece that you got rights for? I'm always curious about how artists work with other artists.
Well, I sort of went on Shutterstock and just had a look through images to see what inspired me. I found a few that I downloaded, and then I went on Fiverr and found this incredibly talented woman, German creative, Les, and I sent her my terrible mock-up. It was terrible, honestly, it was shocking, and they turned it into this cover that I absolutely love. It's so like simplistic, and it's exactly what I wanted. Like, they even managed to somehow get the right font, like from my brain. So I'm definitely going to keep working with them. In fact, I've commissioned them to do the cover of the follow-up book to this one, because I think they're very, very talented. So yeah, I was very lucky, because that was the second person I think I contacted. So I got very lucky. I didn't have to go on too many blind dates, so to speak.
It is a kind of matchmaking process when you're doing something like shared creation. There's an intimacy to it that is it can be very vulnerable. I mean, I think some people can do it from a mental place, but that's just not, sounds like your style. And I relate to that.
Yeah.
Something I find a lot of joy in creating with, as part of, so for me, like the podcast, like the opportunity to talk to people and also really work to like support and promote things that I think are good, but like, I just don't think we get that same level of like attention. Like the mainstream media and the dominant stories are all very kind of depressing. And obviously it's not really true, but the preponderance of depression and despair is like, really, could we talk about, because there's so many people who are out there really working to either create or work to make things better, or work to build something that is more sustainable and more functional for a larger number of people. And for some reason, that information just stays sort of less shared. And it's just, I think that if we can just get a little more hope, we'll all do better.
There is a saying amongst journalists that I learned at university, not from any of my teachers, mine. If it bleeds, it leads. People like to read about despair. They did a study, and I'm probably misquoting this completely because it was years ago, but they basically did a study on front pages of newspapers and say ones that feature pictures from war zones outsell ones that feature pictures of new babies, because people prefer. I mean, that was like 20 years ago, so it might be different, it might be worse, it might be better, but if it bleeds, it leads is what they used to say. And I do not agree with that, because I don't like to obviously read all this fear-mongering and sad stuff. I don't like to read it, but I'm drawn to read it. There's something in me, like a human need. It's like the explosion of true crime dramas at the moment, true crime podcasts. I mean, I was like, when they first came out, I was like, I'm never listening to that. Got no interest in it. And now I'm like, oh, get the murders. Ooh. I think it's just a human. I don't know if it makes us feel better because we're not in that situation. I don't know if it's a form of survival because we want to learn why that happened to this person so we can avoid it happening to us. I think there's a whole psyche behind it, and the press in general have picked up on that, because where the money goes is where they're going to go. And now we're stuck in this cycle of never-ending negativity because it works.
Right? Exactly. If it's effective, there I go touching my face, but those are the rules. I break them, but I try not to. Right? No, it is. And the thing is, those things happen, and it's not bad. It's just there's, in my opinion, we're too far that way. And so it just, for me, it's saying, all right, what can we do? And not in a like sweep it all under the rug. Like there's a lot going on that is not good and needs to be dealt with. However, it's kind of what you were talking about, I think, right before we hopped on, which is that as humans, we tend to be so problem focused. And it's very difficult to create when you're constantly focusing on problems. So the other piece for me is saying, all right, a colleague of mine several years ago, we were talking about inclusion, right? And she asked, what does an inclusive society look like? And I honestly reflect on that. I wouldn't say daily, but regularly, because I'm like, oh, if we don't know what an inclusive society looks like, we're not going to get there. And instead of focusing on all the ways in which we are discriminatory and exclusive, which do need to be dealt with, or so maybe not instead of, but in addition to noticing the problems, we also have to imagine the solutions. We have to give ourselves something to work towards, because what you focus on does tend to be what you create. So like they taught us that in driving class. They're like, if you're driving and there's a red truck and you don't want to hit it, instead of saying don't hit the red truck, you say stay in the middle of the road. Because if you keep saying to yourself, don't hit the red truck, you are likely to go hit the red truck. It's just how our brains work. That's what you're focusing on. And so similarly, if we want to create a society that's inclusive or, lifts people up, or we work together, we have to look towards the middle of the road, but we have to know where that is. And right now we're just always like, oh, we don't want to do the red truck. And that's why we keep hitting it. Like we haven't come up with our dream of like inclusion or a vision for it. And I think partially because we've never seen it, or if we have, we didn't know it. I don't know, but not to be despairing, but like that I get it. And we do need to notice the problems because they exist, they're real. And if we don't do this step of imagining something else, we could get there by accident, but I don't know.
I think hopefully it's going to continue, but I think the world in general, and obviously I say this from a very privileged position of being a cis white woman, I do think that each generation is getting slightly better. Yeah. Because just from being a woman, I can tell the difference between somebody that would have been in my grandparents' age group, somebody in my parents' age group, and somebody in my age group, and somebody in Gen Z. The way they treat women, it's so up here you've got like stay in the kitchen.
Right.
Down there you've got stay in the kitchen but have a job as well. Here you've got have it all, and down here you've got just be happy, basically. So
yeah,
I hope it carries on like that, because I think that's the only way that one day we'll have this tolerant society.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Well, and obviously we've had some setbacks here in the US. And I've been looking at like the history, and I didn't realize until I looked into it a little more deeply, like women in our country couldn't have bank accounts until the late 60s, like legally. And so it's like, oh, no wonder there was this weird sort of like manipulate men kind of attitude amongst our, mothers and grandmothers. That was their only access to survival, right? Like, and so like seeing the ways in which women have like also had to evolve to like be able to recognize like, oh, we don't have to try and manage somebody else. We can actually just do our thing. But I feel like it makes more sense to me as to why that's taken more time, because that I can't imagine if I couldn't like manage my own money. Like, what would that be like?
I was doing some research for a completely different book at the moment, and I never knew that there was a clause. So after World War II, and women, this is obviously in the UK is what I've been researching, when women, it was more acceptable for them to have a job. There was still, I think it was called the marriage clause. So once you got married, you had to give up your job. And that's mad to me. Like, I couldn't imagine having got married to my husband and then, oh, thanks for everything. See you later. It's just, and that wasn't that long ago. That was like in the 50s, 60s. Like you say, it's not hundreds. The way you think about it, you think of hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and it just wasn't. And and hopefully things like Black Lives Matter and trans rights and all that are on the same journey that women's rights have been on. And hopefully they'll get the same support that they did from the feminists and LGBT and all that sort of stuff, the people that little bit further up the ladder, because equal rights isn't about the person at the top of the ladder having to come down. It's about helping everybody get to that top of the ladder. That's what this perfect society would be, is everybody's at the top of the ladder, everyone's got the same opportunities, no one has to be scared to be who they are or who they love or any of that, but it's just helping each other up. So yeah, I can't really word it any better. Like, my brain's not working, but yeah, it's a ladder, and everyone's on different stages of the rung. I mean, some people, Donald Trump, are right at the top of the ladder and unaware of it. And unfortunately, I don't think people like that are ever going to help anybody else get up the ladder. So it's up to everybody else to get everybody up there all together.
Yeah, we all rise together. Like, and the more we can work together and do what we can to help one another. And that's the other thing too for me, is that, and also I love the way you said that. It's beautiful. It was beautiful, and I think that when I look at it, it's because in the midst of everything, it's like, wow, things have been hard, and it feels, like I said, like there's that despair, and at the same time, like there's so much going on that's good, and so we can contribute, to those in our communities, or we can like go out and see how to show up for a rally or a cause that is needing that support if we have that space and time, and just to recognize that if we each do just a little bit wherever we can, because those grand sweeping gestures and the like, the one, what is it, the Muad'Dib coming in to save us all, like, it's not just this, I never want anyone to have that much power, because then what's going to happen if they decide to like be a jerk? Suddenly they're going to cause a lot of harm. It's much better if we could all work together to create something that's truly sustainable. And I think it's David Wong. I really appreciated his perspective, and I'll quote it inaccurately, but it was something along the lines of, if there are two kinds of people, it's those who believe we can coexist as differences and different tribes, and those who believe one thing has to be dominant. And I'm in that I believe we can coexist. I don't have to have the same politics or the same way of doing things and still be able to respect that, you have your situation and I have mine. And you're like, how you're doing it is perfectly fine for you.
And as long as you're kind to everybody and never try, because obviously you're going to hurt people at some point in time, but as long as you never go into any situation with malice, then I think you're okay and you're my kind of person. But if you have malice in your heart and your interactions, then that's, like you say, that's that kind of person that doesn't think we can coexist, and we ain't got no time for you, buddy.
Yeah, we gotta move forward. So we're getting close to wrap. Is there anything? So your book comes out on September 2nd, so we should, should be looking for that. And then anything else anything happening that you want to let people know about? I'll pop your website up. This is the best way to get a hold of Steph. You want to have her on your podcast, or you want to buy her book or sign up for her newsletter, go there.
I promise I'll behave better on any other podcasts.
But yeah, anything else, or?
So I've just joined Wattpad. So if you ever fancy reading my terrible first drafts of ideas, you can find on there under SM Thomas Writes, because SM Thomas was taken. Damn you. And
who is that person? What are they thinking?
I know.
Did they at least create? Because if they don't create,
I haven't looked them up. I'm going to look them up. Send them a message.
Like, excuse me, if you're not using this name, I want it.
Thank you. But other than the disease, I mean, that's literally 90% of my life at the moment, getting that book off the ground, and the other 10% is writing body count. So there's not much else me, I'm afraid.
That's awesome. No, you have to focus. Like that's how you get things done. Focus. So I feel that. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining me today, sharing what you're up to and your journey. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And then let me see. I have wait a minute. So next week, I'm doing a podcast with Julie. We'll pop that up for people to see. She works in inclusion. So a nice segue from our chat today. And she will talk about her company and the ways in which they have worked to build allyship. And I'm going to have her also talk about her children's books, because I think that's pretty cool that she wrote inclusion-focused children's books. Yeah, she's a really neat. But yeah, I follow her on LinkedIn. She's got really interesting stuff that she's talking about, very practical, and we'll see. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys next week. And thank you so much for being here with me today, Steph. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my nonsense.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.